Hello Year 6 and welcome to today's maths lesson. So we are going to continue to build on what we did on Monday and Tuesday to do with fractions, and today we're going to look at decimal equivalences. So we're going to look at which decimals are equivalent to which fractions, and then when we get a fraction we can also make it a decimal number. Okay, best way to doing that is let's get into the screen. So let me make my face a little bit bigger so you can see me. We are looking at fractions and decimal equivalents. So if we got an answer, what we're aiming for is if I got an answer like 2 1/5, for us to be able to simplify that further to 2.2, and we're going to go through that and how we do that now. So firstly, we need to understand why we have decimal equivalences and things. So if I look at this and I highlighted in just this first one and this one and this first one and this one, okay? From here we've got 0 to 1. Now, if I broke that down into fractions, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 parts, we would have here 1/10, 2/10, and all the way up to 9/10 and 1. Okay, they're all of the fractions. Now, when we separate this into decimals, hopefully you will know that if I had the number 20, you would know that this is the tens column. This is the units or the ones column. And then after this, we have the tenths column because we split everything. Everything here is 10 times smaller than that. So here we have 0.1, 0.2, and so on and so forth. 0.9 is up here. And hopefully you can see that 1/10 as a fraction is the same as 0.1. So our first important fact to remember is that 1/10 is 0.1. Okay, let's look at another one. Now let's look at a half. So if I shaded in, where's my shader? Half of this. Okay, so I've got 5 shaded and 5 not shaded, and I shaved in half of this. Okay, hopefully what you'll do and agree with me is that if I just used, let's find a different pen, this red, you will hopefully agree with me that I have split by shading in half of this. I have just shaded in 1/2. Okay, hopefully you'll agree with that. Now we said on the previous slide that each one of these was 0.1, so we've got 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. Okay, so the second fraction that it's really important to remember is that a half is 0.5. Let's look at another one. I am going to put all of these on the screen. Okay, let's say that I'm going to split this one into 5 equal parts, okay? Now, currently it's split into 10, but if I do each one of those, it's 2. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equal parts. And if I shade in just one of those equal parts, you will hopefully agree with me, again, that if each of these is 0.1, we've got need a red pen. That's 0.1, and this is 0.2. So I've shaded in 1 out of the 5 parts, so that's 1/5. So 1/5 is 0.2. That's another important one to remember. And then finally, if we're thinking about a quarter. Now for this, I have to scroll down a little bit. If I split this into 4 parts, so still it's the same length, and I've split it into 4 parts, and then I've shaded in 1. Hopefully you'll agree with me that that is 1/4. Now 1/4, if we look at this one, gets us to this point. So I've shaded in all of 0.1, 0.2, and then I'm halfway between 0.2 and 0.3. And halfway between 0.2 and 0.3 means that I'm at 0.2, and then in my hundredths column is a 5 because I'm halfway between. So a quarter is equal to 0.25, okay? Really important fact to remember. So that is all of these. So we talked about this one, about 1/10, we talked about a half, we talked about a quarter, we talked about a 5th. Now the other ones too that remembers, to remember that 1/100th means that we have a 1 in the hundredths column, so it's going to be 0.01. And then you might occasionally be asked about 1/3. Now 1/3 is a tricky one, because if I split a whole into 3 parts, I'll just quickly show you on this one. It's really difficult to do, and it would actually end up with there'd be one like here and one like here. Okay, if I was trying to split it into 3, and what that actually means is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and then a third of that. So a third is going to be 0.333. Now, using these facts, let's say that I was finding 3 quarters. Well, if 1 quarter is 0.25, that must mean that 2 quarters is 0.5, double that, and then 3 quarters must be another 0.25, so that's 0.75. Similarly, if I was trying to find, let's say, 4/5, well, if 1/5 is 0.2, then 2/5 must be 0.4, 3/5 must be 0.6, and 4/5 must be 0.8. Now, you're going to need to use these in the questions that you're doing today. So some of the questions look like this. These are like the first, I think it's 4 questions. So you get something like 17 divided by 2. So if I do 17 divided by 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16, no, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I end up with 8, and then in the old days we might have said remainder 1. But the way that I want you to express it is 1 over, and then we use whatever we were dividing it by as our denominator, which is 8.5. Now what I want you to do today is simplify that further so it's a decimal. So the whole number is never going to change, that is still going to be 8. But this half is equivalent to 0.5. So my answer is going to be 8.5. Now a common mistake that I see is people write 8 and then 0.5. Okay, well that number there you've written is 80.5. It's definitely miles bigger than 8.5. So remember that the 0.5, because what we're actually doing is 8 add 0.5. Well, nothing changes in my ones, but I add the 0.5, okay? Let me rub those out to avoid confusion. 37 divided by 4. So I'm doing 37 divided by 4, so it's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. So I end up with 9 wholes to 36. I've got 1 remainder, and I'm doing that as the number I was dividing by is the fraction. So 9.25. So my whole number, if I'm simplifying that to decimals, is going to be 9, that doesn't change. And then 1/4, as we see over here, is 0.25. So my answer is 9.25. Last one on this page, 28 divided by 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So my whole number is 5. I got to 25, so my remainder is 3 over 5. My 1/5 is 0.2. That means that 3/5 is 0.6. So as a decimal, it is 5.6. Okay, they're the first kind of questions you get on Ready, Steady or Go. These are like Ready, that's kind of a steady one. This is more of a Go one. Then you might get asked some questions like this, where you're asked to simplify these fractions into decimal numbers. So the first thing I want you to do is make them mixed numbers. So in this first one, how many quarters are there in a whole? Well, it's 4, so I've got 1 and then 3 left over. Okay, because what I've actually done is 7 divided by 4. How many holes can I make? Well, I can only make 1 because I've got 7 of them. So they use the 4 to make 1, and then I've got 3 left over. And then using this, our whole number stays the same. If 1/4 is 0.25, then 3/4 must be 0.75. On this one, 12 tenths. Well, how many tenths are there in a whole? 10. So then I've got 2 left over. So it's 1 whole and then 2 tenths. My whole number stays the same. 1/10 is 0.1, so 2 tenths is 0.2. And then this one, 18 eighths. Well, how many eighths can go into the 18? Well, it's 2 wholes, then I'm left with 2 eighths left over. Now at this point you might be thinking, oh, you've not told us about the eighths. However, using what we practiced on Tuesday, I can divide 2 and 8 by 2. So actually 2 eighths is the same as, if I divide that by 2, I get 1. If I divide that by 2, I get 4. 2.25. So then we know as a decimal it's going to be 2, and then 1/4 is 0.25. Okay, that's like this. You've got 2 or 3 questions like that on Ready, Steady and Go. And then finally, you'll get some questions that look like this. So we answer the question as we would do earlier in the week. So 4/5 is 1/4. Well, I don't want to do that because I've got different denominators. So I think of a denominator that I can make them both, and I'm going to make them both 20. So how have I got from the 5 to the 20? I've times by 4, so I times that by 4. How have I got from the 4 to the 20? I've times it by 5, so I times that by 5. So my answer is going to be 21 over 20. Okay, then I'm going to change that to a mixed number. So how many 20ths in the whole? Well, there's 1, so I've got 1 and 1/20th. Now at this point, I've actually ended up doing quite a tricky one. We'll stick with it. I don't know what 1/20th is, but I know what 1/10th is, and 1/10th is 0.1, and a 20th is going to be half the size of that. So my answer is actually going to be 1.05. Now don't worry too much. That wasn't a great example, okay? So if that's confused you, don't worry, but find the answer. The ones I'm ready and steady will definitely be easier than that, because you'll be left with a fraction that's easier to convert to a decimal. Let's quickly do this one together. So before I multiply it, I'm going to convert them to improper. So there's going to be 6 halves in 3 wholes plus that one, so 7/2 times by, well, there's going to be 10/5 in 2 wholes plus those 2, so 12/5. If I multiply, we do numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator, so I'm left with 84, because that's 7 times 12, over 10. Then I can work out, well, that means that I've got 8 wholes, because I can fit 8 lots of 10, with 4/10 left over. If 1/10 is 0.1, then 4/10 must be 0.4, so my answer is 8.4. Okay, now I know year 6 that was quite a lot of thinking and maybe something a bit new for some people, but if you take it one step at a time, hopefully you realize that it's not too difficult. As always, choose an activity that's going to challenge you. So for some of us that might be ready. For some of us though, we've been doing ready when I think we could maybe do steady. Some of us maybe been doing steady when I think we could probably do go. Okay, so year 6, think about what you would do if you're in school. Okay, I think lots of us are thinking, I'm at home, I want to do it quick, I'll just jump on ready. Well, if at school you would normally do in steady, possibly going for go, then you're probably not going to do ready today, okay? Challenge yourself. We only get better by challenging ourselves. And year 6, I will see you in the next wonderful, hang on, we're not in W's, magnificent, marvelosio, mas lesionio. Goodbye.